The Tsar Dominion fleet hung above the fractured colonies like a steel crown, cold and merciless against the dark. Its commanders leaned back in their grav seats, voices dripping with the ease of creatures too certain of their power. "Another settlement broken," Admiral Vare said, his mandibles clicking with disdain as the burning ruins of the human outpost turned beneath them. "They fall faster than glass towers in a sandstorm. Pathetic." His officers chuckled. A few even looked bored. This was conquest reduced to routine, an empire so vast it no longer counted its victories, only the number of moons it set aflame. Humans, with their tiny worlds and primitive fleets, had given the Tsar nothing but brief amusement before surrendering like all the others. On the main display, the planet's atmosphere boiled where orbital strikes had torn holes in its surface. "They still use chemical propellants, don't they?" Another officer mused. "Rockets. Actual rockets." A ripple of laughter. No one mentioned the civilians. No one spoke of the children crammed into refugee ships or the silence of the dead. To the Tsar Dominion, humanity was simply another defiant spark snuffed out by superior technology and inevitable empire. But Admiral Kryn did not laugh. He stood at the edge of the command deck, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the drifting wreckage below. Older than most of the Council's admirals, Kryn carried his rank with the weight of too many campaigns. He had learned long ago that victory was the most dangerous teacher. It made fools of conquerors. "We've taken half a dozen of their colonies," Kryn said at last, his voice cutting through the room's mirth. "And yet Earth itself remains silent." Vare smirked. "Silence means surrender, old friend." What else could it mean? Kryn's gaze did not move from the display. Surrender speaks. Pleads. Begs. This is something else. The room cooled at his tone. For days now, after every defeat, humanity had given no reply. No distress calls, no diplomats, no ultimatums. Even when the Dominion torched Mars' orbital station, a hub rumored to house millions, Earth had remained a ghost. The fleets expected cries for mercy. Instead, there was nothing. It unsettled Kryn in a way no enemy had in decades. Empires crumbled loudly. Silence was something else entirely. "Perhaps they've accepted the inevitable," Vare said, waving the thought away. "You study wars, Kryn. You know when an enemy is broken." "I also know," Kryn replied slowly, "that cornered prey bites hardest." That earned him a few smirks from younger officers, the ones who thought him paranoid, relic of an older, bloodier era. Kryn let them smirk. History had a way of silencing the arrogant better than any speech could. A junior sensor tech interrupted before the admirals could continue their verbal fencing. "Sir, scouts report another human outpost ahead. Designation: Sol Relay 3. Defenses minimal. Likely abandoned." "Another victory," Vare said, rising. "Let's finish this. Bring me their transmission codes. I'll offer them surrender before we take the station apart." But the relay station did not answer. Not when they hailed it. Not when they approached orbit. Not even when they tore through its meager satellite guard and docked boarding craft along its hull. Empty. No crew. No resistance. The Dominion officers joked about ghosts, about humans fleeing faster than the Empire's approach, but Kryn felt the unease deepen. Abandoned worlds. Empty stations. A civilization falling silent, he muttered. "Strange, isn't it?" Vare shot him a look. "Strange? It's pathetic. They flee because they know they can't fight." Kryn didn't answer. His eyes lingered on the relay's intact command consoles. Everything here looked functional, as though someone had left in a hurry, but not in fear. In purpose. That was what disturbed him most. By the time the Dominion fleet returned to high orbit, the Alien Council was already calling the war a victory. Reports streamed in from other empires, how quickly humanity fell, how easily their colonies burned. Each empire competed to seize the most territory, the richest resources, the largest captives. No one questioned why every major human fleet had vanished after the first few skirmishes. No one but Kryn. He spent the night reviewing human history files seized from abandoned data vaults, records of wars fought not across stars, but on their own soil. Civilizations turning entire continents into firestorms. Weapons so catastrophic they ended ages in minutes. Generals who called massacre strategy. Leaders who ordered death with calm signatures. The footage played in silence on his private console, cities atomized in white light, oceans boiling under test detonations, soldiers advancing through chemical fog. He had seen war. He had waged it for centuries. But this was something else. "Sir," the young comms officer interrupted his thoughts. Kryn turned. "Transmission from the Council," she said. "They want confirmation that Sol Relay 3 has been secured." Kryn gave it. But as the officer left, he muttered to the empty room, "You fools. You think we've beaten them. You don't even see it." Because he saw it now, in the cold efficiency of those abandoned stations, in the absolute silence of Earth's response. Humanity wasn't fleeing. They were clearing the board. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond their scanners, the missing fleets waited. When they finally came, Kryn suspected, the galaxy would learn the difference between winning battles and provoking something far worse. The Dominion Council chamber glittered with cold light, a cathedral of glass and alloy orbiting their capital world. 5 empires, 5 banners, 5 voices bound by centuries of dominance, each as proud as the last. Yet only one figure stood apart, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Admiral Kryn, summoned not to speak, but to witness what the others called inevitable triumph. The counselors traded reports like gamblers showing winning cards, colony after colony falling silent under their fleets, mining worlds captured, orbital defenses swept aside. They spoke of resources, shipping lanes, population counts. Not once did anyone mention Earth itself. It was Ver who broke the rhythm, slamming a clawed hand against the projection table. "We should strike the cradle directly. End this now before these humans burrow any deeper. The longer we wait, the more worlds slip through our fingers." "Through your fingers, perhaps," another counselor sneered. "My fleets hold 3 systems already." They argued as predators do, mistaking their own noise for dominance. Kryn listened, silent, watching the tactical maps glowing above the table. Whole sectors turned the color of conquest, but the center, the Sol system, remained untouched. Empty, as though humanity had withdrawn behind a wall of silence. Finally Kryn spoke. "Have any of you wondered," he asked slowly, "why they've left it so?" The counselors turned. Some looked irritated, others amused. "Because they have nothing left to fight with," Bear said. "They're broken, cornered, afraid." Kryn studied the shifting maps. Afraid things scream. They beg. They surrender. These humans do none of those. He paused. "It feels deliberate." The council laughed, sharp and derisive. To them, Kryn was the old soldier who saw ghosts in every shadow. They did not remember the wars he had fought, the enemies who smiled before they bled the empires dry. But Kryn remembered. He returned to his flagship without another word. It was there, hours later, that the first real crack appeared in the Dominion's certainty. The forward fleet under Ver's command advanced on another human relay station, expecting the same abandonment as before. Their approach met no resistance, no transmissions, no sign of life at all, until the human fleet appeared without warning, emerging from black space itself, as though carved from shadow. Sleek vessels, angular and silent, sliding from unseen corridors in the void. No radiation trails, no energy spikes to announce their arrival. One moment the stars were empty. The next they were not. The Dominion ships scrambled into battle formation, shouting orders, engines flaring. Then came the transmission. It was audio only. No image. A human voice, cold and steady, carrying across every channel at once. "Leave the system," it said. "You will not be warned again." Nothing more. The Dominion commanders laughed at the audacity. Ver himself responded with threats, promising their annihilation if they did not surrender immediately. The human fleet moved first. Precision strikes cut through Dominion escorts before their shields even registered impact. Missiles vanished mid-flight, intercepted by defense systems too fast to track. Entire cruisers went dark, their reactors silenced by weapons no Dominion engineer had ever seen before. And through it all, the human ships advanced without haste, without triumph, without a single wasted shot. Kryn watched the battle feed from his flagship, jaw tightening with every passing moment. This was no desperate defense, no cornered prey. This was execution wrapped in silence. Within 12 minutes, the Dominion fleet broke. Half their ships burned. The rest fled into warped space, chased by nothing at all. The human vessels did not pursue. They simply vanished the way they had arrived, folding back into whatever corridors of blackness had birthed them. When Vare staggered into the council chamber hours later, his pride scorched raw, the room fell silent at last. He spoke of weapons that ignored shields, ships that slipped through blockades as though the laws of physics bowed to them, fleets coordinated with machine precision, yet silent as stone. They knew our codes, he said bitterly. Our formations. Our response times. It was as if they had studied us for decades. Kryn said nothing, because he had seen the same thing and worse. While the council argued over the scale of the defeat, Kryn returned to his private quarters and accessed the human data archives seized weeks earlier. He searched not for technology, but for history. Wars unfolded across the screens, Earth's nations burning one another over ideology, religion, resources, pride. Centuries of violence escalating with each era, from sharpened iron to nuclear fire to weapons that scarred planets. But what struck him most was not their brutality. It was their endurance. Empires rose, empires fell, yet humanity endured through ruin after ruin, always advancing, always rebuilding. No single catastrophe had broken them, not even themselves. Kryn sat alone in the glow of the display, the weight of realization settling over him like ash. The council saw primitives. Kryn saw something older, something forged in extinction fires so many times it had stopped fearing death entirely. The silence from Earth was no surrender. It was warning, and the empires, drunk on arrogance, were too loud to hear it. By the time the council convened again to debate retaliation, Kryn already knew how it would end. The others spoke of teaching humans a lesson, of crushing their arrogance, of making examples of their homeworld. Kryn kept his eyes on the star maps, watching the empty Sol system like a man studying storm clouds on the horizon. He thought of the human voice on the comms, calm as a blade before it falls. You will not be warned again. He believed it. The council chamber felt smaller than before, its gleaming walls pressing inward as though the station itself sensed what none of the leaders wished to name. The banners of 5 empires still hung in arrogant symmetry above the round table, but the usual laughter was gone. Only Admiral Kryn remained motionless at the perimeter, the same unreadable expression carved into his features as voices rose and collided like waves against stone. This was a setback, nothing more. Vare snapped, his pride clearly still bleeding from the defeat. A single fleet destroyed does not make these humans a threat. We strike Earth now, with everything we have, and erase this problem before it festers further. One of the other counselors hissed. And if they answer again as they did before, will you lose another fleet? Another system? They are gnats with stolen technology, Vare spat back. Their silence is nothing but bravado. You'll see. But Kryn saw something else. Fear in their eyes, though none of them would name it. They'd all seen the same recordings. Dominion cruisers torn apart like paper, entire formations shredded before they could even return fire. The human ships had fought without hesitation, without waste, without even the satisfaction of victory. It was as if war to them was not glory or duty, but simply inevitable. One counselor finally said what the others avoided. They didn't pursue your retreating ships, Admiral. That isn't fear. That's control. They let you live. The words silenced the room. Vare growled something low, but it lacked conviction now. Kryn stepped forward at last, breaking his usual restraint. You think this is still a border skirmish. It isn't. This is a species that has survived every catastrophe it has ever created for itself, and now you've given it a single enemy to unify against. He swept his gaze across them. Look at their history before you call them weak. They've buried worlds in ash long before they reached the stars. They can't win against 5 empires, Bear shot back. Kryn's stare didn't waver. They don't have to win battles. They only have to end civilizations. Do you not see it? They fight like they've done this before. That shook them, though none admitted it aloud. Pride was a hard habit to break. When the council finally voted, the split was bitter. 2 empires favored negotiation, perhaps even retreat to consolidate strength. The other 3 demanded escalation, calling Kryn's warnings cowardice. Ver swore he would personally lead the combined armada that would reduce Earth itself to molten rock. Kryn didn't argue further. He had learned long ago that empires never believed in storms until the sky itself split apart. The fleets gathered within the week, the largest armada the galaxy had seen in centuries. Hundreds of warships, carriers, siege platforms, all advancing toward soul space with the confidence of giants. Broadcasts declared the coming strike would be decisive, final, a demonstration to any future rebels. But Kryn watched the mobilization with the calm of a man reading his own death sentence. He saw it in the patterns, the way the human fleets hadn't expanded outward, hadn't harassed supply lines or attacked colonies. They were letting the empires come, inviting them in, and the empires, blind with pride, marched straight toward the waiting jaws. The first sign came when the armada reached the outskirts of Sol. Communication relays went dark, one by one, as if the entire system were folding in on itself. Scout ships vanished. Probes returned only static. Then the wormholes opened. Not natural ones. Artificial, blooming across space like black flowers, surrounding the armada in perfect silence. From each one, human ships poured forth, sleek, angular vessels that moved with impossible coordination, cutting through formation after formation before the admirals even understood what was happening. The empires returned fire desperately, unleashing enough energy to scorch moons. But the human fleets moved as though they'd written the battle's ending before it began. Command ships detonated in sudden blossoms of light, escorts shredded by weapons that bent through shields as though they weren't there at all. Kryn's vessel stayed at the edge of the chaos, recording everything. He didn't speak, didn't issue orders. There was nothing left to say. The empires had wanted war. Now they were learning what war looked like when fought by those who had practiced it upon themselves for millennia. One Dominion captain's voice cracked across the comms, half static, half terror. They know our codes. They're cutting through secure channels. How is this possible? No one answered him. The human fleet split the armada apart within an hour. Not a single enemy world was bombarded, no civilians targeted, no unnecessary shots fired. It was as though the humans wanted only the fleets, the war machines, the pride of 5 empires shattered before all witnesses. When retreat was finally ordered, barely a third of the armada escaped. The rest burned in orbit or drifted silent and powerless amid the wreckage of their own arrogance. Kryn watched from the bridge as the surviving ships scattered in panic across the stars, 5 empires crumbling at once. No pursuit came. The human fleet simply held position, waiting, as if offering the galaxy time to understand what had just happened. Kryn understood. The silence had never been surrender. It had been warning just as he feared. And now the galaxy had heard it in fire and ruin. He stood alone at the viewport long after the battle ended, the wreckage glittering like dying stars across the void. Humanity hadn't simply won. They had demonstrated something far worse. And Kryn suspected they were far from finished. Smoke still drifted through the void where the armada had burned. 1,000 warships reduced to fractured hulls and frozen lifeboats, scattered like ashes across the orbit of Sol. Yet the human fleet did not advance. They did not broadcast victory. They simply waited, a silent wall of steel and shadow surrounding Earth, every formation precise, every engine dark as if conserving even triumph itself. Admiral Kryn's vessel limped among the survivors, its crew broken, voices hushed, as though speaking too loudly might draw the humans' attention. He stood at the forward viewport, watching the enemy lines with the unease of a man staring into the eyes of something far older than he had imagined. He thought of the arrogance that had filled the council chamber days ago, promises of swift victory, boasts about teaching the upstart species humility. Now 5 empires trembled on the edge of ruin, their pride shattered more completely than their fleets. The first human transmission came hours later. No demands, no threats. Just a voice, steady and cold as the silence before a storm. The war is over. Withdraw your remaining forces. Your empires will retain governance under human oversight. Accept this or lose everything. Not conquest. Not extermination. Oversight. The council's surviving members gathered aboard a neutral station days later, arguments low and bitter. Some wanted revenge, though none could say how. Others urged surrender, pointing to the wreckage still drifting through soul space like mute testimony. Every voice carried the edge of fear, the hollow echo of those who had glimpsed something too vast to fight. Kryn attended but did not speak until the shouting dulled to silence. Then he rose, his voice carrying not the sharpness of command but the calm of inevitability. "You still believe you have a choice," he said. "You don't. The humans gave us a warning before any of this began. We laughed. Then they broke our fleets, our pride, our future, and still they show restraint.
Do you not see the mercy in that?"
One counselor slammed his fist on the table. Mercy? They humiliated 5 empires. They could have erased us, Kryn replied evenly. Yet our worlds still stand. Our people live. That is not humiliation. That is a lesson we would do well to learn before we cease to exist entirely. The debate withered after that. Even pride has limits when survival demands obedience. When the terms were finally signed, the human fleet moved not to occupy capitals or plunder resources, but to establish corridors of oversight, neutral stations, trade relays, communication hubs linking every empire under human supervision. It was efficient, orderly, surgical. Within weeks, the galaxy belonged not through conquest, but through control so absolute no one dared test its edges. Kryn was summoned to meet the human commander on one such station, a vast structure built in silence above what had once been Dominion territory. He expected a soldier of terrifying stature, perhaps some legendary figure forged from war. Instead, he found a quiet man in a dark uniform, his expression unreadable, his words measured as though even victory did not stir him. "Admiral Kryn," the man said. "You warned them. They didn't listen." Kryn studied him carefully. "You planned this from the beginning." The human did not deny it. "We prepared. Your empires taught us long ago what waits in this galaxy. We decided we would never be prey again." There was no pride in his voice. No anger either. Just the calm certainty of someone stating gravity itself would continue to pull planets through their orbits. "You've won the war," Kryn said slowly. "What do you want now?" The human's gaze shifted to the stars beyond the viewport. "Stability. Unity. For centuries, your empires ruled through fear. Now you'll keep your worlds, your cultures, your sovereignty, but under laws that prevent this from happening again. Trade. Diplomacy. Order. A pause. No more empires devouring empires while the rest of the galaxy burns." It was conquest disguised as mercy, Kryn realized. A single species replacing centuries of chaos with a silence no one would dare break. The council dissolved within months, its proud leaders reduced to administrators under human oversight. Trade resumed. Borders stabilized. Piracy vanished almost overnight as fleets once loyal to 5 empires now answered to a single, united authority. Yet Kryn felt no hatred. Only the weight of history turning beneath his feet. On the day he accepted the post of regional governor, a position offered not as reward, but as necessity, he stood alone on the observation deck, watching human construction fleets assemble new stations across once disputed borders. The galaxy reshaped itself not through war anymore, but through the precision of a species that had waited centuries for this moment. He remembered the first burned colony, the council's laughter, the arrogance that had blinded them all. And he remembered the silence from Earth, the warning no one had understood until it was far too late. One of his aides approached quietly. "Do you think they'll stay?" she asked. "The humans. Once everything is finished." Kryn watched a line of human warships slide past the station, silent as ever, engines dark against the stars. "They'll stay," he said at last, because this was never about ending a war. It was about beginning something else. He didn't add the rest aloud, that the humans had spoken of stability, but their fleets kept building, that their eyes turned not inward now, but outward, toward the uncharted edges of the galaxy, as though seeking the next threat before it found them first. Because a species that had survived its own capacity for extinction would never again wait for danger to come knocking. Kryn suspected the galaxy had only glimpsed the beginning of what humanity intended to become. And as the human banners rose where 5 empires once ruled, he felt the faintest echo of the old fear returning, not for his people this time, but for whatever lay waiting beyond the stars when humanity finally came looking.